We want to understand this balance. Nature handles it, doesn't she? But in nature, that which balances these opposing forces that cause that storm, in nature, those opposing forces are balanced by a series of other forces. We can talk about them. Just the passage of time. The conditions that allowed the clash, they themselves pass because the earth spins and the sun sets and the temperature of the ground cools. All of these different things are causing a constant reconciliation amongst these forces that cause storms. Now, the key here is to start recognizing, and this is very important, that you and I, we have the earth in us. We have the conflicting forces. How many of you know you have opposing pressure systems? Opposing desires, if you want to use those words. Thoughts that contradict one another. A constant state of conflicting parts of ourselves that produce storms. Something happens to us. Have you ever run into something that happened to you and boom, and then here's the storm? That cruel man who said what he said, that person who betrayed you the way they betrayed you, that dream you had about what you were going to do and become that got dashed for whatever reason it got dashed. Here is this storm that never goes away. It just sits down there in this little semi-seed form waiting for an event to come along, and the minute the event comes, it creates the conditions that allow that force to rise up, and all of a sudden the storm that took place 25 years ago is there in the moment. Why? Why do human beings live like that? Always looking around to see if something's going to happen that's going to cause that storm to explode inside of them. And then believing that they can reconcile those storms when they do by thinking back over what happened or justifying to themselves the explosion that took place. Anytime we justify a storm, we don't resolve it. We actually strengthen it in ourselves. So, we have in us these conflicting forces. It's part of our nature. But here's where things are different. Unlike Mother Nature, who's able to reconcile these opposing forces that produce storms, there's something in us that not only doesn't reconcile them, but actually causes them to continue. Because we have something in us that nature doesn't have. And here's what we have in us that nature doesn't have. That is the seed of the storms and that which keeps us in a state of being off balance. We have the power of imagination. You see, when you were 12, 15, 20, 30, 60, whatever it was, and that moment took place, that painful event took place, the mind, in order to grasp and deal with that which has created a storm in it, must have some way to think about the event or the person. And it takes that event, it takes that person, and it forms it into an image. It uses imagination and gives that moment a body. Gives that event a certain content that it uses to reflect upon what just took place. And that imagination that produces that thought is the exact same thing over and over again that in the moment of any storm, it goes back and calls on. So that when something happens to us, when something happens to you, a storm takes place in your life, a problem takes place, and that's all stirred up, what's the first thing that happens inside of you? We go into thought, don't we? Our mind reaches deep into itself and pulls out what has been stored there that it can use to give itself something to balance itself by in the storm. Which is a lot like, by the way, grabbing an anchor when you jump off a boat thinking it's a life vest. We can do so much better than that if we understand how the mind will fix an event. How many of you know what it means to have the mind fix an event? Something took place and man, that mind fixes that event in your mind. Yes or no? It fixes, it gets a clear picture of it. Then, when something happens, it'll actually call up what made you mad. You ever been talking to somebody and they did something that bothered you, and suddenly you have more dirt on that human being than Hoover has on all the floors in the world? Do you know what I'm saying? Where does all that dirt come from? And what's the dirt doing? What is that negative state doing? Not resolving, balancing the cause of the storm, fermenting it, producing more of it through its justification. And this is what human beings are used to doing in the moment of a storm, is allowing that moment of disturbance to produce all of that imagery, those things that we have inside of us that tell us, well, I knew that would happen, or she's always been like that, or this can't turn out any different than this. You name what the mind grabs onto, and you'll see that it grabs onto it in order to balance the moment. It gives you something to cling to, and I'm saying that we must see clearly that that doesn't work if we want to achieve true spiritual balance.